All right, so we're going to do a little weekend series here. If you are just tuning in for the first time or whatever, this is kind of a good spot to join in. This is for Easter weekend 2017. So if you're watching this later, it's 2017 where I am. And so we are going to be looking at Luke 24. And we're going to kind of take a different approach at this. This video is coming out on Good Friday. And it's not your typical Good Friday passage to read, because Good Friday is about the crucifixion usually and how we remember that and what Jesus did for us. But we're kind of going to take a different kind of approach to this. We're kind of going to tell the end of the story and kind of revert back to the beginning of the story. Many TV shows kind of do that sometimes. They'll show you like a little snapshot at the beginning and be kind of like, what's that about? And then they'll go back 4 years or something and lead you into what happened. So that's what we're going to be looking at here in Luke 24. But this part that we're going to read also has the crucifixion mentioned in it. So we're going to get some of that. But we're going to focus on this story, on this road to Emmaus. And I've read this story before, but I want to say that I kind of saw it in a different way when I was listening to a podcast about it. And it was brought to me in a different light. And it was kind of an interesting way to look at it. So this road was kind of an unknown road. You would have trouble finding it on a map today because it's kind of like most back roads now that used to be like major highways, and now they're just little broken down roads that people travel on every once in a while. So Emmaus, this road to Emmaus was kind of like that. It was just hard road to kind of pinpoint and find. It was insignificant really. But it was journeying from Jerusalem to Emmaus, this road, and it was 7 miles. So we're going to spend time looking at this, and we're going to meet a couple people that walking along this road. And so continuing with our broken theme that we've been kind of in, but we're going to spend some time with these people and looking at this kind of story that they have to tell. So the first part of this is called Broken Hope, and it's going to be in Luke 24, starting with this walk to Emmaus. So we're going to be looking at this story in the New Living Translation, the NLT version, kind of like the way that reads. And so we're going to pick this up in Luke 24:13. And it says, that same day, 2 of Jesus' followers were walking to the village of Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. As they walked along, they were talking about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things, Jesus himself suddenly came and began walking along with them. But God kept them from recognizing him. He asked them, what are you discussing so intently as you walk along? They stopped short, sadness written across their face. Then one of them, Cleopas, replied, you must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that have happened there the last few days. What things? Jesus asked. The things that happened to Jesus of Nazareth, the things that happened to Jesus, the man from Nazareth. They said, he was a prophet who did powerful miracles and was a mighty teacher in the eyes of God and all the people. But our leading priests and other religious leaders handed him over to be condemned to death, and they crucified him. We had hoped he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. This all happened 3 days ago. Then some of the women from our group of his followers were at his tomb early this morning, and they came back with an amazing report. They said that his body was missing, and they had seen angels who told them that Jesus was alive. Some of our men ran out to see, and sure enough, his body was gone, just as the women had said. So we're going to kind of stop there. And so we kind of see this is taking place after Easter. So we're already getting reports that Jesus had rose from the dead. But I wanted to kind of retract out of that and focus on the phrase, we had hoped. He was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. And the thing is that why was hope such a big deal to them? Why did this get put in here? The thing is that Jesus was, quite frankly, the person they had been waiting for. They literally had been hoping for him all their life. And the Old Testament had said many different things about him, and that's all they had to go by. So when it says we had hoped, they were actually talking about this. And they were actually talking about what they read in the Old Testament, and Jesus' life was supposed to come as it was. So we had the Old Testament, and as I mentioned in a previous video, there was lots of people that knew the Old Testament. Portions of the Old Testament, high amounts of it, had memorized. I can't even handle a verse or two. But they had portions memorized, rules and laws and things of the Old Testament memorized. And Jesus came and turned that all upside down and had everybody all mad and freaked out. But I want to talk about from Malachi to Matthew, so the Old and the New Testament, there's 400 years there that nothing was said. The prophets were quiet, the prophecies were not spoken, and so people were just kind of left in limbo. They were left to figure out what was going on and why nothing was happening. And then Jesus finally was born, and everything was fulfilled that they had said about him. So they said exactly how he was going to be born, where he was going to be born, and all of this. And so people started to kind of realize, and Jesus grew up. He started kind of gathering a following, and people started saying, maybe he is the one. Maybe he is the Messiah. So when we read, we had hoped, we see that Jesus now was their hope, literally was their hope. In Matthew, we see that angel tell Mary, because Mary was scared to death, didn't know how this was going to work out. But he's like, no, don't be afraid. Jesus is going to save the people from their sins. He's going to save the world. And so they had that to lean on to, and they had all of this stuff about Jesus that they knew. And then when he was handed over, betrayed, crucified, and they watched all of this. They watched the man they'd followed for 3 years get crucified and put in a tomb. And their hope kind of went out the window. It was like, well, he obviously can't be the one we were talking about because he died. And how can a king die? Everybody thought he was supposed to be king, right? The disciples, people that followed him, everybody thought he was supposed to be the king. The next king. He was going to come in, take over, rule Israel, and fix everything. But when he didn't, things kind of got different. As a matter of fact, before that, Judas kind of decided he was going to betray him because of the fact that he didn't want to be king. Judas wanted to kind of be in it for the money. Judas was the disciples' treasurer. And we talked about him in a previous video. But he was kind of handling their money and the money that a king could bring in. And why was he so excited about the money? Because he was taking some of it for himself. And when Jesus didn't want to be king, and when Jesus didn't want to be this mighty warrior, Judas was like, okay, well then I'm going to do it my way. And he betrayed him. But so we had hoped is perfectly legitimate here for them to say that. Because pretty much everything that they had dreamed about was coming true, then all of a sudden it wasn't. And so everybody thought that. The disciples ran off and hid, and other people were just in shock and awe, and it was just a day of celebration, really. But as we can see, this road that was going along was just that. It was a road of disappointment and sadness and broken dreams and shattered hope and everything. It was just a big mess for them. And a lot of the time, though, it's because I think they had put their hope in Jesus, right? Which is a good thing to do. But they had put their hope in Jesus the man. And Jesus the man wasn't what they had to put their hope in. It was Jesus the God. You see, Jesus, it's kind of tough to wrap your head around, but Jesus was human, but he was also God. So he knew things that were coming. He says when Judas betrays him, he tells his disciples, look, here comes my betrayer. So he knew things were coming. But he was also man. So he had sympathy and compassion, and he felt what we feel, and he did everything that we do. And he just had the human side as well. And that's what they put their hope in. But the human side of him died. You can't kill God, which is a good thing. So they had put their hope in that. And that's kind of where they were. But another image that I want to see, and it kind of translate into us, is while they were walking along this road and they were talking and hoping and picturing like, okay, now what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? What's going to happen? Jesus is gone. Jesus was supposed to redeem, restore, save Israel, and now he's not. And now what are we going to do about it? How are we going to fix this? We can't fix it. He was the one. Now what? And A lot of the time, sometimes we might feel that way about things that are going on with us. You know, we might hope that we'd been somewhere different, or we might have hoped that school would have paid off by now, or that we'd have this dream job, and, you know, our kids wouldn't be acting crazy, and all of this kind of stuff. And we hoped for this, and we hoped that we would have passed the test because we studied all night, and we hoped that this person would like us because we put our time and energy into it. And we are left just like them, though. We had hoped. And when we get to the other end of it, we're like, well, that didn't work out. But then Jesus, though, and this is the kind of the picture that I see, Jesus comes up beside them. Now, they didn't know. A lot of the times we don't see Jesus either. Why? Quite simply because we're focused on what we're not getting. We're focused on the fact that we have all of this stuff that's not working out for us, and we can't see what actually is really working out for us. And so Jesus walks up beside him, but God kept them from recognizing him. So he's walking along, and they're telling all of this stuff. They're telling Jesus everything that happened to Jesus. It's a very interesting thing. They're talking, Jesus is kind of like, yes, what things? And he's picturing, they're talking to Jesus. And they're telling him everything, and he's just kind of like, yeah, oh, really, that's very interesting. Very nice story. Yes. But he's there with them. And a lot of the times as we walk along and things aren't adding up and things don't make sense and Jesus is right there with us, but sometimes we don't recognize that he's there because we're focused on everything else, and we're focused on the fact that we didn't pass the test, or that we didn't do this, or that this didn't happen and this didn't take form, and here we are now stuck with the what ifs and the questions, and we focus on the what ifs. And sometimes Jesus is right there. All we have to do is kind of turn and be like, oh, maybe everything will work out. Things are happening for a reason, and this is where we're supposed to be. And they walked along this road. And we're going to continue this in the next video. The story's not over. And so they walk along here with him, telling him all of these things, but he's right there. Their hope is right there. And they're thinking he's back there in a grave somewhere, decomposing, but he's right there with them. And a lot of the time we don't see it either, and he's right there with us. He's trying to get us through some of these things and the roads that don't make sense and the parts of life that don't make sense, and Jesus is right there trying to help, trying to be there for guidance and security, really. So they had hoped, but we're going to see something in the next couple of videos here. And sometimes we hope, but we just need to kind of focus on Jesus a little bit more. If we can do that, things will make a little bit better sense, and life will kind of see this safe place, hopefully. And Jesus is there with us. The hope and the Savior of the world is still right there, and Jesus is going to be king. And a lot of the times we get stuck in this too, where Jesus didn't do things the way that they thought. That was Judas' problem. Oh, he's supposed to be king, but he's not doing it now. So I'm going to take care of it. And a lot of the times things didn't work out for them the way they thought. When they said King of Kings and Prince of Peace and Savior of the world, they thought it meant king. He was going to come in, take over, sit down on his throne, and rule with an iron fist. And he is, but not now. That's coming. And that's where the hope lies, is Jesus is coming. He's going to be king. He is king, but he's going to be king. He's going to rule this world one day. And that's where we put our hope.